Almost every community has scary stories and urban legends that are passed around. They range from a boogeyman lurking in the woods, to a colossal creature living in nearby bodies of water, to stories of ghouls living in the old house in the neighborhood. Most have been tailored to try to stop children or teenagers from taking part in risky behavior, whether that be walking into dangerous areas at night or hanging out with their partners in secluded lovers' lanes. Many are completely false and nothing more than scary stories, but a few are based in reality or are even completely true stories. These are 5 scary myths and urban legends that turned out to be true. Number 5. For a long time, people living in the city of Puebla in Mexico would joke about the secret tunnels that supposedly existed beneath the city. Puebla isn't alone in being a Mexican city with urban legends about tunnels that supposedly existed beneath their feet, but in Puebla, there was never any trace of these mysterious tunnels. That was until maps were found. A series of maps created in the 19th century indicated that there may have been some truth to these old urban legends, but it wasn't enough to convince many. The tunnels remained nothing more than a story until 2014. As often seems to be the case with this type of discovery, it was as construction workers began renovation work in the city that the tunnels were rediscovered. Over the next few months, around 10 kilometers of historic paths were found beneath the city. The tunnels were built between 300 and 500 years ago. Construction began after the city was founded in 1531. Architectural styles differ along the tunnels, which were tall enough to ride a horse through, indicating they weren't built in one go but added to over time. At first, it was thought the tunnels were some kind of sewage system, but more investigation showed that they were more than that. Trapped in the mud that had filled the tunnels for over hundreds of years were small toys, marbles, kitchen utensils, weaponry, bullets, and gunpowder. Originally, the tunnels connected the newly built Catholic churches in the area and the city hall, and were used to transport the church's treasures without attracting attention. However, it was later used during battles to transport weaponry and ammunitions, including during the now famous Cinco de Mayo battle against French invasion. After the 1910 Mexican Revolution, the multiple entrances of the tunnels were sealed and disguised, and the tunnels became stories told by older generations and forgotten by the rest of the city. The tunnels survived the weight of heavy modern buildings, waterworks, and even earthquakes. After years of being an urban legend, these tunnels are now open to the public and are being studied by groups trying to learn more about the city's past. Number 4. The ocean occupies more than 70% of the surface of the globe, but 95% of the ocean remains completely unexplored. It's often said we know more about other worlds than our own oceans. While this is probably an exaggeration, we do have more accurate maps of the surface of the moon than the ocean floor. As such, it's not surprising that marine biologists are constantly discovering new creatures that live beneath the waves. Norse sailors long believed a fantastical monster with the power to destroy ships occupied the frigid waters. The Kraken was a huge monster with enormous tentacles able to tear ships apart and form whirlpools with its body. According to a writer in 1755, multiple groups of sailors all reported the same distinctly squid-like creature. In the early days of modern science, stories of the Kraken were so detailed and consistent, many scientists included it in official classifications. However, due to its elusiveness, the creature was quickly demoted to the status of mythology, and scientists deemed it was nothing more than a cryptid. Around 100 years later, this classification also came into doubt. In 1857, a Danish scientist examined a beak that was believed to have come from a squid species larger than that of any that had been discovered up until this point. He used the beak to estimate the creature's size and determined this was indeed an entirely new species. He named it the Architeuthis doe, Latin for ruling squid, and it's believed this creature was what inspired the stories of the Kraken. Sailors likely saw the squid from a distance, or dead specimens that had washed ashore, and imagined the terrible things a creature this big could do. Great squids are thought to grow between 13 and 15 meters, though it's hard to tell exactly, as it's incredibly rare to see a live specimen. The first time one was ever captured on film was in 2012, when researchers were filming some 2,000 feet below the surface of the Pacific Ocean. The great squid is now not even the largest squid known to man. In 1925, the colossal squid was discovered, known to be much larger and much heavier than its giant cousin. Given its location in the frigid waters of Antarctica, it's unlikely the colossal squid was the creature that captured the imaginations of the North sailors. However, it's possible something else lurks beneath the waters, still undiscovered, which is responsible for the Kraken myth. Number 3. The Russian sleep experiment is one of the eeriest creepypasta urban legends, and one of the most infamous. The story goes that a group of scientists from the Soviet Union conducted an experiment on prisoners of war during the Second World War. The prisoners were sealed in a bunker which was filled with an experimental gas which kept them awake. In their sleep-deprived state, the prisoners went crazy, mutilating themselves and attacking the scientists when they entered the bunker. The prisoners became dependent on the gas in just a few days and were deliriously happy despite their injuries. According to the story, all prisoners and scientists involved in the experiment were either killed or killed themselves, and the operation was quietly shut down. While the story is thankfully false, it was inspired by countless experiments conducted by many nations during the 19th and 20th centuries, including a Russian sleep experiment. Nazi Germany and Japan conducted the most famous wartime experiments. Both groups conducted a variety of vile experiments, often causing diseases in living prisoners to see how they progressed and testing chemical weapons on them. The Allies, including the United States and United Kingdom, also conducted human experiments during the war, often on their own people. The Soviet Union's wartime experiments tended to focus on testing deadly poisons on prisoners of war. With many of these being gases, it's easy to see how this could have translated into the insomnia in the Russian sleep experiment urban legend. However, there's one other experiment that would have added to this legend. In the late 1800s, a group of Russian physicians and scientists conducted a number of experiments to study sleep deprivation on living beings. The scientists use a variety of methods to keep the subject awake, including keeping the subjects exercising, keeping them in metal cages, and intense sensory stimulation. During this time, the subjects had enough access to food and water, but still died within just a handful of weeks. This proved animals needed sleep in order to survive, as the sleep loss caused lesions on their brains. None of the subjects mutilated themselves, and scientists involved didn't commit suicide due to the experiment. The biggest difference between the real-life sleep experiment and the creepypasta was that the subjects were puppies rather than human prisoners of war. Number 2. Chainmail emails have largely died down since their peak of popularity in the early 2000s, though most people with some kind of messaging account receive the odd mail from time to time. The majority of these messages were completely false, but at least one was not only based on a real-life story, but actually warned of a real murder. The message was circulated around 2001 and warned women against a man with the username Slave Master. According to this message, Slave Master was a man who contacted random women on chat sites like AIM or AOL. He would lure in women using the site and then kill them. According to one version of the story, he'd killed 56 women and was still looking for victims. Unfortunately, this email didn't originate until after the slave master had already claimed his victims. John Edward Robinson lived a completely ordinary life from the outside. However, that innocent life was proven to be fiction when he was found guilty of fraud, causing him to spend a brief stint in prison, but being released just in time for the beginning of the internet age. He set up 5 computers and used a variety of usernames on BDSM chat sites, which he used to seek out women for hookups. One of the usernames was actually Slave Master. Robinson would tell women he could look after them, and lied about his background and how much money he was earning. He painted a life of luxury and invited the women to live and travel with him as a BDSM sex slave. This trick worked at least twice, and the women both quickly disappeared not long after moving in with him. It was only after one woman was hired to take after his father and subsequently disappeared that his scheme fell apart. The woman's mother became suspicious, and the fake letters Robinson sent her didn't settle her fears. He was eventually found guilty of the murders of 8 women, 3 of which were killed before he was sent to prison for fraud. He's currently on death row. Number 1. For some travelers, being in an unfamiliar place can be unsettling enough, and there's a small worry that someone or something might be watching them while they sleep at hotels or guest houses. That's never been helped by the multiple urban legend stories about bodies being discovered under mattresses. There are countless versions of this story, all taking place in different locations around the world, involving different guests who have different reactions. All are particularly disturbing. One common story goes that a newly married couple checked into a suite in a hotel for their honeymoon. When they arrived, they were met with a foul odor, which was so bad they had to ask to change rooms. In some versions, the couple are moved to another room, but in others, the hotel tried multiple times to get rid of the smell to no success. It's only after either the manager or the husband removes the mattress that they find the source of the smell. A dead body had been stuffed beneath it. In some cases, the guests actually sleep atop the dead body, not wanting to complain about the lumpy mattress. It's hard to pinpoint which version of the story was the original, and it's likely they originated from a misremembering or exaggeration on one of the many real-life crimes that resemble this urban legend. Some of the most common details, like that the motel in question was in Las Vegas, don't stand up to scrutiny, but there's no denying many hotel rooms have become dumping grounds for murderers. In 2016, a woman's body was found wrapped in plastic beneath a hotel bed in Mexico City. The woman, aged between 25 and 30 years old, had arrived with a male companion more than a week before her discovery. The two entered the room, and at some point while they were there, she was suffocated to death and hidden beneath the bed. Multiple guests had checked in and slept in the room before someone alerted the front desk to the smell. 2 maids lifted up the bed and made the grisly discovery. Unfortunately, this was far from the first time something like this had happened, and it hasn't been the last. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.